Fascist Jews. Lehi, the Jews who want to ally with Hitler. World War II is such a large piece of history that one could study it for a lifetime and still not fully understand everything about it. The war appears relatively cut and dry, with the Allies as the good guys and the Axis powers as bad guys, although of course this is simplification. Such simplification obscures certain subtleties, and today we'll be talking about the relatively obscure episode of Jews who want to ally with Nazi Germany. Everyone knows about the Holocaust, in which 6 million Jews, about 2 out of every 3 European Jews, were slaughtered by the Nazis. You would think that the Nazi genocide of Jews would deter any Jews from a potential alliance. Then you had heard of the Lehi. Palestine during World War II was a hotbed of unrest. Called Mandatory Palestine, it was governed by the British after a mandate was obtained from the League of Nations in June of 1922. During the British Mandate period, the area experienced the ascent of 2 major nationalist movements, one among the Jews and the other among the Palestinian Arabs. So you got these Arabs and Jews at each other's throats and fighting against the British. Sounds like a picnic in Palestine. No joke, people are massacring each other left and right. In this hostile environment, we got Zionist paramilitary groups like the Irgun, which operated between 1931 and 1948. It was an offshoot of the older and larger Jewish paramilitary organization Haganah. Basically, the Irgun were terrorists that rebelled against the British, although they would try to avoid harming civilians. So they were nice terrorists, I guess, because they told you in advance before blowing you up. But then World War II happened. So the Irgun decided that they should naturally help the British fight the Nazis, since Nazis and Jews were not compatible at all. Z. Jabotinsky, then the Irgun's supreme commander, had decided that diplomacy and working with the British would best serve the Zionist cause. However, some members of Irgun felt otherwise and split off to form a paramilitary group called Lehi. Now, Lehi was created in August 1940 by Abraham Stern. Now, Stern had been a member of the Irgun High Command, but he didn't agree with Irgun suspending its underground military activities against the British for the duration of the war. Lehi actually referred to themselves as terrorists and may have been one of the last organizations to do so. In 1940, the idea of the final solution was still unthinkable, and Stern believed that Hitler wanted to make Germany Judenrein through emigration as opposed to extermination. In December of 1940, Lehi even contacted Germany with a proposal to aid German conquest into the Middle East in return for recognition of a Jewish state open to unlimited immigration. Now, Stern argued that the time for Zionist diplomacy was over, and that it was time for armed struggle against the British. Like other Zionists, he objected to the White Paper in 1939, which restricted both Jewish immigration and Jewish land purchases in Palestine. For Stern, quote, no difference existed between Hitler and Chamberlain, between Dachau or Buchenwald and sealing the gates of Eretz Israel, end quote. Really? I'm guessing he hasn't personally experienced Dachau this time of the year. Stern wanted to open Palestine to all Jewish refugees from Europe and considered this as by far the most important issue of the day. Britain would not allow this. Therefore, he concluded that the Yishu or Jews of Palestine should fight the British rather than support them in the war. When the Irgun made a truce with the British, Stern left the Irgun to form his own group, which he called Irgun Tzva Lema B'Israel, later Lohami Herut Israel. In September 1940, the organization was officially named Lehi, the Hebrew acronym of the latter name, and saving me from pronouncing those extremely long names. Stern and his followers believed that dying for the quote-unquote foreign occupier, unquote, who was obstructing the creation of the Jewish state was useless. They differentiated between, quote, enemies of the Jewish people, the British, and the, quote, Jew haters or the Nazis, believing that the former needed to be defeated and the later manipulated. Clearly, Stern hadn't read Mein Kampf, otherwise he would have realized Hitler was way too far gone and insane to be manipulated. It's hard to tell if the Lehi were fascists or not. Most of the Lehi members were admirers of the Italian fascist movement, but the founder, Abraham Stern, refused to join a fascist organization when he wanted to study in Italy. Perhaps the Lehi wanted to create a totalitarian state, who knows? Undoubtedly, they were racist. Publications by Lehi contain references to a Jewish master race, supposedly, contrasting the Jews with Arabs who were seen as a nation of slaves. Lehi advocated mass expulsion of all Arabs from Palestine and Transjordan, or even their physical annihilation. Lehi was responsible for 42 assassinations, more than twice as many as the Irgun and Haganah combined during the same period. Of those Lehi assassinations that Ben Yehuda classified as political, more than half the victims were Jews. So much for saving the master race. In mid-1940, Stern became convinced that the Italians were interested in the establishment of a fascist Jewish state in Palestine. Stern's proposal would turn the Kingdom of Israel into a satellite of the Axis powers. However, this was unfounded, and thus Lehi, having identified a common interest between the intentions of the new German order and Jewish national aspirations, proposed forming an alliance in World War II with Nazi Germany. The organization offered cooperation on the following terms. Lehi would rebel against the British, while Germany would recognize an independent Jewish state in Israel, and all Jews leaving their homes in Europe could enter Palestine with no restriction of numbers. Late in 1940, Lehi Representative Naftali Lubinczyk went to Beirut to meet German official Werner Otto von Hentig. The Lehi documents outlined that his rule would be authoritarian and indicated similarities between the organization and the Nazis. A member of Lehi wrote about Hitler, quote, "It is not Hitler who is the hater of the kingdom of Israel and the return to Zion. It is not Hitler who subjects us to the cruel fate of falling a second and third time into Hitler's hands, but the British." Wait, what? Stern also proposed recruiting some 40,000 Jews from occupied Europe to invade Palestine with German support to oust the British. On the 11th of January 1941, Vice Admiral Ralph von der Marwitz, the German naval attaché in Turkey, filed a report called the Ankara document, conveying an offer by Lehi to actively take part in the war on Germany's side in return for German support for the establishment of the historic Jewish state on a national and totalitarian basis bound by a treaty with the German Reich. Now, von der Marwitz delivered the offer, classified it as secret, to the German ambassador in Turkey, and on the 21st of January 1941, it was sent to Berlin. There was never any response. A second attempt to contact the Nazis was made at the end of 1941, but it was even less successful. The emissary Yellen Moore was arrested in Syria before he could even carry out the mission. The proposed alliance with Nazi Germany cost Lehi and Stern much support. This proposal wasn't entirely illogical. Stern had experienced firsthand how hostile the British were to Zionists, and until 1942, one could imagine that Hitler might have been satisfied with simply evicting the Jewish population out of his empire, rather than exterminating them as he chose to do so instead. Besides, by this time, the Axis powers seemed invincible with their iron grip on Western Europe, and it seemed like only a matter of time before Britain fell to them too. Stern, misguided though he was, thought Lehi was taking the winning side of history. Stern's resolve against the British hardened when he learned that his father was trapped in Poland. He believed that this was because of British restrictions on Jewish travel, and did not realize that it was actually because Nazi death squads were preparing for the wholesale murder of Polish Jews. Although it's possible that the Reich may have briefly considered Stern's preposterous alliance, it would never have amounted to anything but a garish dream. Anyway, in February 1942, with the price on his head, Stern was shot dead with uncertain circumstances in a Tel Aviv apartment. Lehi would be forced to struggle along without his dubious leadership. Even as the full scale of Nazi atrocities became more evident in 1943, Lehi refused to accept Hitler as the main foe, as opposed to Great Britain. In 1942, Lehi succeeded in killing Walter Guinness, first Baron Moyne and the highest-ranking British official in the Middle East. Killing a high-profile Brit gained Lehi the infamous notoriety they craved, but it won them no sympathy from Palestinian Jews and further infuriated the British government under Winston Churchill. Then Lehi bombed the Cairo Haifa train, killing nearly 100 and wounding dozens. In April of 1948, 120 Irgun and Lehi militants attacked the Arab village of Deir Yassin, massacring 100 to 250 villagers and wounding 12, and thus it ended an infamous terrorist group, which evaporated and melted into Israel. The Stern Gang, as it was otherwise called, quietly evaporated after the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, with its last few leaders under trial despite its efforts to transition into a pro-Soviet political party. Those members who didn't join the newly formed Israel Defense Forces or retire voluntarily drifted into an even more fanatical group that continued to pursue campaigns based on assassinations and bombing. You can't fix crazy, I guess. However, one of the members did become the 7th Prime Minister of Israel, so crime does pay. Thanks for watching, and make sure to subscribe for more great content. This is Scholar of the World, signing out.